This is slime mold. This strange organism, it's pretty remarkable. The first time I found it, I was absolutely fascinated by it. See, if you're just as captivated as I was by nature's knack for outperforming human engineering, this video is part of a popular research on the internet. So, researchers placed food sources around a map of Tokyo, and the slime mold formed a network strikingly similar to that of Tokyo's railway system. A system humans spent decades designing, testing, and refining. Yet, biologically speaking, this mold has absolutely no significance in my life. So, why am I standing here talking about it? Because while trying to make sense of the twists and turns of my own life, I went searching for the best way to explain the idea I had for the heart of this talk. And I came across something I wasn't expecting. This organism had somehow found a way to chart its course inside my own mind. So while I was stretching, branching, and constantly redrawing the paths of my own life, it turns out it does the same, just without a brain to overthink any of it. And that's where the story begins. See, I think we misunderstand our lives because we insist on viewing them as completed stories. We focus on the major decisions, the defining moments, and the things that really sound important when we say them out loud. We ask questions like, what's my 5-year plan? What's my purpose? Where is all of this leading? As though understanding life requires standing above it. But most of life, it isn't lived from above, it's lived at the very next turn. My first realization of this happened when I was somewhere in the 7th grade. I had signed up for a river cleanup. Now, why I had done it, I don't know. Because I wasn't trying to save the planet, or I wasn't trying to launch a career in environmental activism. I was just a 13-year-old who thought helping clean up a river was a decent thing to do on a Saturday morning. But when I went to the riverbank, a strange realization unfolded. The more I began to understand the problem at hand, the smaller it made my effort feel. Factories, shipping routes, industrial wastes, entire problems were operating at a scale I couldn't even begin to comprehend. And the larger this problem grew, the smaller my contribution felt. Until eventually I remember standing there looking at the river thinking, what difference does this actually make? And eventually the cleanup ended and life moved on, but the question remained, rather quietly, kind of waiting for its moment to resurface. And this had kind of formed a thinking pattern within me, without me realizing it. I had formed a pattern where I would zoom out and look at the entire network rather than how the individual tendrils are progressing. And this, it didn't stay by the river, but it started showing up in various parts of my life. So fast forward a few years, and I was now in grade 10. And grade 10, it's a rather important year for us. It's the first time we are publicly tested with our board exams. But this year, it was kind of special to me because it was the year I said yes, pretty randomly, to a space settlement design competition. What I didn't know was that it would eventually become the Indian National and then Asian Regional Space Settlement Design Competition. I had my goals and ambitions set. I was going to do it all. I was going to get good grades. I was going to work on this year-long competition, and I was still going to take part in my school events. And then came December, the board exam in February, and my team and I had just won the Indian national round. Now, amidst this moment of happiness is where the dilemma began to unfold. The Asian round, it was going to take place in another country. It would end on February 3rd, and my first board exam would begin on February 18th. Now, given the importance of this exam in the Indian context, and the fact that relatives and people you have never met never stop asking you how much you scored, the decision, it becomes pretty obvious, right? To not go. And the decision, it would have been simpler if I was the kind of student who was academically well planned. If I had finished my academic curriculum well in advance, I would have been able to make that decision without a doubt. But I wasn't, and in all of this chaos is where the problem resurfaced. The same one from the river, the one that had made me zoom out and look at the entire network, that happened again. Because I went for the competition, but there in another country, what was happening inside my mind was something I couldn't have predicted. I was somehow now managing to compare myself to people who seemed further ahead. I was somehow standing there measuring myself and measuring a distance to some imagined future version of success. All I was thinking about kind of felt like so little time and so many expectations until I stood there preventing myself from giving it my all. Because when I came back, the results arrived. And they were genuinely good, for anyone wondering, but it hadn't fixed the problem at hand. The problem was that I had been trying to swallow the entire scheme of things instead of focus on the small pieces, the small intersections, the small decisions that actually add up to the whole picture. But this was the first time I was actually seeing the problem. And I began to accept slowly, with much resistance, that progress might have less to do with seeing the entire network and more to do with taking the next turn. And once I began to notice this, I couldn't stop. So then came the next big decision of my life, kind of waiting for me with a comical understatement as 3 words on a form. They were 3 words: science, commerce, arts, and an entire life hidden inside each one, waiting to be lived or never known. Now, standing at that intersection, I couldn't possibly tell which will be the best path for me. And frankly speaking, nobody can. It is kind of a guessing game. But I kind of knew I had to look back on my recent revelation. I had to take the smallest decision I could. I knew I wanted to study biology. So that's what I did. I picked it. And in spite of it coming with subjects I didn't particularly love, I chose it anyway, because it was the best decision I could have made at that given time. See, the truth is we're constantly trying to make decisions with information that can only exist in the future. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to understand the shape of my life before I was willing to create it. I wanted the network before I built it. I wanted the pattern before I created it. But that's not how patterns work. And now the common question that arises is, isn't that rather reckless? Don't the most successful people plan things out meticulously? And the truth is they do. But here's the distinction I have come to make, and it's this. It's that planning is great at optimizing paths you can already see, but it cannot help you with the paths you cannot. And looking back, none of the turns that became meaningful in my life were on any map I could have drawn at any given time. Planning wasn't the enemy, but demanding to know the map before was. And that is the paradox of a meaningful life. Because meaning is never waiting for you at a turn, it is always waiting beyond it. And that's it. That is the entire strategy. It's the only one that's worked for me and for an organism with no brain. Because it means the question isn't, how do I know this is the right turn? Rather, what becomes possible if I take it? Thank you.